Hello guys, welcome to another video on sociology. So this is a revision session and here I'll be taking up a topic that religious minorities and their problems. Okay, so I presume that you have already attended the course, my course or some other mentor's course, and that you have completed this topic. Then only this video is going to be useful for you as it is a revision session. If not, then this is not going to help you if you're a beginner. So what we will do is, if you're getting a question on religious minorities and their problem, and if it's a general question of 20 marker, you need to incorporate so many dimensions. So the answer will be discussed in that perspective. But if you get a short note on religious minorities or problems of religious minorities, and they can ask you specific problems like problems of Sikhs or problems of Muslims or problems of Parsis, like that, Zoroastrians, like that, if you're getting, then again, you need to arrange it accordingly. So I try to cover everything and I try to incorporate the important perspectives and important points that you cannot afford to miss from this topic. So you have already covered the topic and this is going to be a revision session for you. So if you're missing out on something, you can add to your note and you can update your note. That's the idea of this particular session. So when you're giving an answer in your introduction, first you need to give an overview of religious diversity in India, and then you talk about the importance of addressing minority issues. Okay, and then you define who's a minority. And I hope you are better equipped with a proper definition. This is something which you definitely need to have. That's the way you are going to impress your examiner. So you'll talk about the constitutional position, Article 2930, or you will be able to use Arnold Ross perspective, how he defined minorities, or Jagannath Padi's perspective, how the characteristics of minorities. So you can use a combination of these three to define who's a minority. Then talk about the problems of religious minorities. So in general, you can define the problems. Specifically, you can define the problems, right? There are general problems and there are specific problems which is related to specific religious minorities. So in general, if you see protection and safety, here you can bring in the perspective of TK Women and Amartya Sen. And then racial tensions and communal rights. Here you can talk about Ashish Nandi's perspective. And then political and civil service representation, you have to discuss this, where you can bring in Sachar committee report and then Pranab Bardhan's views. And then socio-economic deprivation, Andre Bette's observation. These are very general. Identity crisis, you can discuss about Desh Pandey's analysis. Hate crimes, Paul Brass on political opportunities, and that you can discuss here. Separatism, that of course Bipin Chandra on historical injustice. And then lack of secular politics. You can talk about Rajiv Bhargava on political secularism. So these are the general issues of any minority community if you take. And then you can go specific like Muslim minorities, where you can talk about Mushirul Hassan's analysis. I have given the PDFs and everything. And Sikh minorities, where you can talk about, Gurharpal Singh on de-peasantization. Okay, Parsi minorities, where you can talk about Rohington mystery on demographic challenges. And then you talk about solution to address minority issues, like talk about protection against communal rights, Gale, Omwood, grassroots approach. Discuss that. Increasing representation, John Rawls on equal opportunities, strengthening development programs, Amartya Sen's capability enhancement, concept you can discuss. We'll also talk about uniform civil code. If there is a separate question, you need to prepare, of course, separately. At the same time, you can add in this also. You can talk about Faizan Mustafa's perspective, and you can Ubendra Bakshi on majoritarian risk. That as a criticism you can write. Okay, and then Supreme Court decisions, or you can talk about, Granville Austin on constitutional morality, integration over assimilation, all these you can mention. And conclusion, you can talk about summary of challenges and solutions, and then role of inclusive policies and secularism. Bring in secularism towards the end when you're concluding your answer, because that is already there in your syllabus, and that is the ultimate solution for this issues. Okay, so this is how your answer should look like. So let's start with these areas. I'll give you 1 points each on whatever I have discussed. I'll give you a proper introduction and I'll give you a proper conclusion, and in between the ideas that I have discussed, I'll give you, in case if you have missed out on something, if your notes do not have these things that I have mentioned, take it down and then go back and refer that and update your notes. That's very important. And guys, if you're looking for the PDFs of my sessions, if you have not attended my sociology course or mentorship program, you can get it free of cost. The details are given in the description. Check out that and download it and prepare your sociology completely. And if you're looking for classes or mentorship program or test series, again, you can get in touch with us. Okay, so let's start with this topic, problems of religious minorities, religious minorities, who are they and their problems. Okay, so in introduction, what you can do, talk about pluralism, diversity first. Okay, because that's very important. So you can say India's religious pluralism, in fact, is a testament to its rich cultural heritage. Talk about positives, okay? Hindus form the majority population, but the country also hosts numerous religious minorities. bring in the minorities, Muslims, Sikhs, Christians, Buddhists, Jains, and others. In fact, those other than Hindus are actually minorities. Now you say that despite the constitutional guarantees of equality, religious minorities in India face a range of issues stemming from socio-political, economic, and cultural factors. So that's how you will be giving the introduction. You talk about diversity, you talk about the minorities who are there, and you talk about the problems, how it is arising. So you're giving the examiner the hint that these are the dimensions that you're going to take up in your answer. Okay, now you talk about who's a minority. So you can talk about the constitutional position. The constitution references you can give. Minorities is there in Article 2930, but does not define the term explicitly. Numerical inferiority is one parameter, but Arnold Rose and Jagannath Pati emphasize that power dynamics, exclusion, and discrimination are crucial for identifying minorities. Okay, now Arnold Rose perspective, if you take, he's talking about minority groups are defined not just by their smaller size, but also by their relative lack of power and societal exclusion. And he states that this is how he discussing this. Okay, a minority is a group. You can take up this definition if you don't have it, or you can get it from the internet also, or you can get it from my PDF also. So a minority is a group differentiated by race, nationality, religion, or language, seen as distinct by both themselves and others, and often with negative connotation. So that's about Arnold Rose. Add upon this, they can specifically ask you also about different perspectives. So see, when it comes to sociology, all these topics, the potential of asking, if they want to make it difficult, they can ask you go specific, right? So then that's the case with everyone also. Now coming to Jagannath Pati's perspective, he talk about characteristics, right? Subordination to the majority, distinctiveness based on cultural or physical feature, inferior perception by the majority, and exclusion from full societal participation. So these are the characteristics he identified. Now let's talk about the problems. So if you get a question in general, the problems you can write one by one. These are general problems. Okay. Otherwise, when they ask specific problem, take out these general problem and add, a couple of specific problem that we will be discussing. That's how, because general problems are there with any religious minority, and then talk about their specific issues also. So the one which I'm going to discuss now, which is general, which is applicable in case of all, right? So protection and safety. So here you talk about TK women, right? He highlight the role of the state in ensuring minority safety, especially during communal tension. And go through that in detail. You need to cover up this. I'm giving you the idea to whom you need to refer to. That's it. That's the objective. Now, Amartya Sen, he argued that societal arrangements must generate protective security to prevent deprivation. And minorities often require police protection during the communal violence or large-scale religious gatherings. But providing comprehensive security is again a logistical challenge also. So these are different dimensions that we need to take up, okay? And then coming to this. Next, you talk about Ashish Nandi's on racial tensions and communal rights. So he examined the psychological roots of communal violence and linking it to the societal insecurities. And if you see, the riots disproportionately harm minorities, eroding their trust on state mechanisms, and regaining their faith in the administration becomes challenging after such kind of incidents. So that's a very good observation, and you need to definitely discuss about this racial tensions. If not racial tension, communal rights we need to discuss. That's one of the major problem when it comes to religious minorities. And then next one, very important, political and civil service representation. Here you need to bring in the Sacha Committee report of 2006 found that the Muslims, the largest minority, are significantly underrepresented in politics and civil service. And you can talk about the Pranab Bardhan also. He argued that the coalition politics of India must incorporate minority voices to ensure inclusive governance. And then you talk about socio-economic deprivation. So here you again bring in Andre Bette. He observed that deprivation among minorities often stems from historical exclusions and systemic biases. So here you talk about Muslims, especially in particular, face challenges in accessing quality education, employment, and housing. And then coming to Satish Deshpande on identity crisis, he argued that minorities often feel marginalized due to fears of assimilation and loss of identity. And minorities struggle to preserve their cultural heritage despite, during this pressure pressure to conform to majorities' norms. So you need to refer this in detail. And hate crimes, talk about Paul Brass. So he linked the hate crimes to political opportunism and the manipulation of communal identities, and forced conversion and attacks on places of worship exacerbate insecurity among the minority groups. Separatism, you can discuss from Bipin Chandra. He views separatist movement as rooted in historical injustice rather than purely religious factors. For example, you can talk about Kashmir, where demands for autonomy are often seen through a communal lens. And then lack of secular politics. Here, talk about Rajiv Bhargava. So he criticizes India's political secularism as being inconsistent and allowing communal politics to thrive. So political parties often exploit the religious sentiments, undermining the secular ethos of governance. Okay, now coming to specific issues. So guys, whatever we have discussed, you can write in any questions which is related to religious minorities. So random, generally they ask what problems of religious minorities. You can discuss that, and specifically if they're asking Muslims or Sikhism, right? Problems of Sikhs, you can write all these like protection and safety. You can discuss racial tensions and communal rights. You can discuss political and civil service representation, socio-economic deprivation, identity crisis, hate crime, separatism, lack of secular politics. All these are common. Now I'll be giving you specific. That again you can add, but here you need to elaborate more. If the question is specific, the specific criticism you need to give weightage at that point of time. For example, if you take Muslim minorities, you talk about Mushirul Hasan. So he, in fact, explores the socio-economic marginalization of Muslims post-independence, prejudices in employment, housing, education that lead to ghettoization and limited upward mobility for Muslims. Six, if you talk about, Gurharpal Singh, he analyzes the impact of events like, Operation Blue Star on Sikh identity and political participation. Issues like drug addiction and de-peasantization also plague the Sikh community. Parsi, again, Rohinton mystery. So through his literary works, mystery highlights the challenges Parsis face, such as dwindling numbers and societal perceptions. The community struggles with late marriages, inbreeding, and a prohibition on conversion, and all these you can again mention. Now we need to talk about solutions to address this minority issue. You can talk about protection against communal rights. So here, Gail Ombud, remember all these thinkers have done discussions on this, so that's why I'm adding these thinkers. So Gail Ombud advocates grassroots movement, to foster communal harmony. So stringent action against right instigators and media campaign promoting, interfaith understanding can reduce the violence. So you can go through Gail Ombud's study on this. And then increasing representation. So here you can talk about John Rawls. Guys, I'm assuming that you'll be writing down the names. If these names are not there in your notes, okay, when we talk about solution, if you can talk about from the perspective of a thinker, that will be better. You can add your own value, your own points also, but you talk about John Rawls, and his theory of justice emphasizes equal opportunities for disadvantaged groups. So special for that, you can talk about special training programs, minority quotas in public service. This can address the representation gaps. And talk about strengthening, development programs. So here you talk about, Amartya Sen. He argued for, capability enhancement through targeted welfares, right? So such kind of targeted welfare schemes on minorities and ensuring minority participation in education and employment of programs is very much essential for social mobility. Coming to Uniform Civil Code, just briefly mention if the question is asked on minorities. Otherwise, if they ask a separate question, it could be of 10 marker. You talk about the definition and function. Again, you can bring in Faizan Mustafa. So, in his, they see, right, the Uniform Civil Code as a tool for modernizing personal laws while preserving diversity. So the universal, or Uniform Civil Code basically aim to eliminate gender discrimination and promote equality across religious groups. So what is the criticism? Criticism you mentioned as Ubendra Bakshi, right? So he warns against the potential misuse of the Uniform Civil Code to impose majoritarian values. So the Uniform Civil Code must balance the principles of secularism with the need to respect cultural pluralism. Now coming to Supreme Court position, Granville Austin, so emphasize the need for constitutional morality in addressing minority rights. And the judiciary advocates integration over assimilation, respecting the pluralistic ethos of the nation. So this is not much required Supreme Court position, but whatever we discussed so far, start from the definition, acknowledging the diversity, and bringing in the problems from where it is coming, and then talking about the problems, bringing in all the thinkers, discussing the general problems, coming to the specific ones, right? Even if you get a question on problems on religious minorities in general, this is how you will proceed. That same order you need to proceed, but balanced way you will write. First, you talk about the general problem, then comes to Sikh, then comes to Parsis, then comes to Muslim, talk specifically, then talk about uniform civil code and conclude. If the question is specific, let's say problem of Muslims, right? Then you talk about again the same structure, but there you give emphasis on Muslim, right? You avoid the Sikh and Parsis at that point of time. General problem remain the same. All those 717s which I have discussed will remain the same. Then talk about Muslim problem. Talk about all the thinkers that I have given to you, and then solutions as I have discussed. The thinkers same you can write Gay Longworth and other things, and then conclude. Okay, so this is how it should be. So you can say India's religious minorities are integral to its cultural aspect, yet they face persistent challenges which is coming from historical, political, and social dynamics. And addressing these issues require multifaceted approach, drawing from insights of thinkers. You can even mention Rajiv Bhargava, Amartya Sen, Bipin Chandra, as you discussed. What you can do, go for inclusive policies, grassroots movements, and commitment to secularism. Bring in that word here for sure. Okay, because that's already there in your syllabus also. You need to talk about that. If you commit to this, India can ensure that its minorities not only coexist but thrive and will contribute to the nation's progress also. So I repeat what all things we covered. If I want to give for a quick recap, we discussed about proper introduction where we gave religious diversity, and then we discussed about importance of addressing these issues, and then we define who's a minority where we talk about Arnold Rose, we discussed about Jagannath Pati, we discussed about constitutional position, and then we discussed about the problems of religious minorities, right? We discussed about thinkers, and we discussed in general, and then we discussed in specific, and we discussed solutions where we brought in Gail Ormwood, John Rawls, and Amartya Sen, and then properly conclude your answer. So this is all about this topic, guys. I hope I have done justice to the time that you spent here. And remember, I have taken it as a revision session, so it won't be possible for me to complete each of these because all these problem of Muslims itself was a one topic. Problem of Sikh is another topic. Parsi is another topic. In general is another topic. We need to have a lot of discussion. But we don't have time, so there's a revision session. So for those who are taking this video as a revision session, I hope I have done justice to your time. So in case if you like the video, share it with your friends who are preparing with sociology. And in case if you're looking for a test series with me or mentorship or courses, you can get the details in the description. So see you guys in the next video. Thank you so much.